this morning, SK is at the Victoria Hospital in Wynberg, Cape Town, where the Justice Department is launching another Thuthuzela Care Centre. The centres are a means to address the challenges that have resulted in inadequate response to the management of gender-based violence cases, particularly domestic violence and sexual offences. They are one-stop centres where offer psychosocial support, medical treatment and legal services on site. Let's check in with SK. SK, a very good morning to you. What are we expecting to happen there in Cape Town?
Well, good morning, Lebu, and as you said, coming to you from Wynberg this morning, and Thuthuzela Care Centres offer very important service in our country. As you know, we have a problem in South Africa with rape, which was at one point described as a country having a rape culture, and also just looking at the scale of gender-based violence and the extent to which South African society is grappling with that. Now, we'll tell you a little bit more about exactly what happens at the Thuthuzela Care Centres, and more pertinently, we'll walk through this centre at the Wynberg facility just to show you exactly what to expect when you arrive at one. So by way of numbers, just to look at the sort of services and the scale to which these Thuthuzela Care Centres have to deal with. Over the past 5 years, the Thuthuzela Care Centres across the country have had to deliver services to 168,049 people. And of those, 88% of the matters that they dealt with were of a sexual offences nature. And of that 88%, 57% were specifically with children as victims. So I think that puts into perspective, just the sheer scale and magnitude, and notwithstanding that perhaps we need more centres like these across the country, but for now, the ones that are there are already delivering huge services to a great number of people across the country. And also just looking at the matters reported to Thuthuzela Care Centres over the last year was already up by 16.4% from the last financial year. That's the 2021 financial year. So to put that in numbers, 34,456 more cases were reported last year, in the last financial year, and already this year we have 4,862 more matters reported than was the case last year at these Thuthuzela Care Centres. So I'm going to walk you through this facility just to give you a sense now of what people can expect when they visit these sites. So starting out here, and I must just indicate, as you come in at the entrance to the hospital, already very encouraging is the fact that where you would perhaps go straight or to your left to the main hospital facility, here you turn right, you take a short right, and then this facility is totally separate from everything else that's going on, because very often we complain about the privacy that victims would enjoy, and here I can tell you it is the case. They walk in here not having to care or deal with the general populace dealing at the rest of the hospital. So I'm going to move to the first room here, which is a waiting room, and I'm joined by Dr. Esme Swanepoel, and she is the clinical head of the Thuthuzela Care Centre. Dr. Swanepoel, thanks so much for being here and joining us this morning. Perhaps you can tell us more succinctly precisely what the intention is and what the Thuthuzela Care Centres are meant for.
Okay. The Thuthuzela Care Centres were meant to deliver a sensitized service to our rape victims and other victims of gender-based violence. It also delivers a service wider than just that. So it's basically clinical forensic medicine, so where medicine and law meet each other. So we also see patients full cycle. So we see them gender-based violence, child abuse, intimate partner violence, and within that's a scope of gender-based violence, abbreviated. But we also see perpetrators here, DNA collection, perpetrators for their mental assessments when they appear in court, when there's any question with regards to that. So we see them, and often we realize that even the perpetrators were victims themselves. So we see the full cycle of victims becoming perpetrators, and perpetrators sadly creating more victims.
So as we walk through the facility, as we come in this first waiting room, so what happens here?
So this first waiting room is at the entrance of the door. We will be seeing and containing patients that would be coming from court, male persons mostly, perpetrators coming for the mental assessments, or patients that might be coming from like Paulsmoor, if they were victims of rape themselves. So we try and keep them separate from our other victims or survivors arriving at the unit. So we try and keep a flow that is separate in that sense. So in this room, we've got couches, so often the investigating officers will be joining whether they're perpetrators or patients themselves at that stage. And so we try and keep them there. They've got their own bathroom behind me. So this is the facility, and we've got a separate door as well.
So the perpetrators more often would come in here right at the entrance of the facility, and they'd be taken into this waiting room, as you saw there, the couches and the chairs, and that is for any interaction with the police or whoever else needs to see them. Then we go into waiting room 2, and this is the facility as we come in. And Dr. Swanepoel, what happens in here?
So this is one of our 2 examination rooms. So this is a room that we try and keep separate for our patients coming from the courts, whether they are the mental assessments, like I said, DNA collection, or if they are male rape victims coming from the facilities, correctional facilities. Then if we are busy in our other room, which is a bit more warmer and sensitive for our rape victims, if that is occupied, then we will use this examination room as well for our rape victims.
And I would imagine, in terms of the perpetrators, those who have perhaps violated some of the other users of the facility, they would also be brought in here.
Yes. Now, I've seen many a patient, the perpetrators coming, and they also come for DNA collection. So we do see them, but we try and keep them separate. So they usually not here the specific victim or survivor from the same perpetrator. They're not here at the same time. But yes, they do come here at the same facility.
Right, Dr. Esme Swanepoel, who is the clinical head of the unit, Thuthuzela Care Centre, explaining to us. So we've showed you what happens right at the entrance. This is where usually the male perpetrators or sometimes rape victims themselves from correctional facilities would come into. So there's the holding room on the one side, and then they come into this room here, as you can see, for the examination, the physical clinical examinations that would take place. And this is where we're going to stop for now. And of course, we'll come back to you after the news, and we'll tell you more about the rest of the facility and the services offered. With that, back to studio.